Hi, I'm Liv, and welcome back to the Book Nook. So for this video I am going to be doing my April, I nearly said May, April wrap-up. Woo! So the first book I read in April I've actually already wrapped up because it was the last of the winter book hibernation books, so that's in my last wrap-up video, but it was A Matter of Death and Life by Andrei Karkov. Then I read The Midnight Library by Matt Haig. So, how do I start? Like, it was an okay book. It was nice enough. I could see what he was doing, you know, the point of it, and sort of regrets and the lives we lead and all this sort of thing. But there's just something about Matt Haig that, and I know I'm not alone with this, that I just don't love. And I had a bit of a conversation with a couple of friends about sort of why I don't like him and all of this sort of thing. And it all went down a tangent, and this is all just, I'm waffling. Basically, it was alright. I can see why it's done so well. For me, it was a little bit saccharine, a little bit maybe obvious, very repetitive, but it's alright. Then I read The Institute by Stephen King. Now I know some of his newer ones maybe aren't quite as beloved as some of his older ones, but I really enjoyed it. The kind of small town cop, I got the same vibes as We Begin at the End by Chris Whitaker, which I really, really enjoyed. And this is about a young boy who's basically got special powers. And he ends up taken to a secret kind of government facility, and him and all the other kids who have telepathy and telekinesis, they have all these powers, and there's all this sort of like secret government experiments going on, and then there's this small town cop who kind of gets brought into it all, and I just found it really entertaining. Again, nothing sort of like groundbreaking or amazing, but it was just really quite entertaining. And surprisingly, this is going to sound mean, I didn't hate all the kids. I don't know, maybe being around a tiny human has mellowed my perspective on kids in books. No, I don't think it has. Most child narrators in books are awful. But these were pretty good. I enjoyed it. Recommend. Really coherent, really smart. I'm good at books. Then I fell in a Stephen King mood, so I continued on, but I went way back, and I read Misery by Stephen King. This is one that I'm a total wuss. I don't know whether I've mentioned that before, but I'm a total wuss. And I think I've always thought that Misery is one of the more horror-based Stephen King books, but I know it's not. It's got written on the spine that it's one of his suspense ones, but I think, I don't know, bits I've seen of like the Kathy Bates film, I've always thought like, oh, I'm too much of a wuss for this, but I really enjoyed it. Again, I think you can tell it's an earlier Stephen King, maybe the editing, I don't know with Stephen King whether he's just kind of considered so good and so kind of in control of his craft that maybe he doesn't get edited as much as other authors would. I don't know, maybe that's a whole can of worms and somebody's probably had this conversation more coherently than I, but a couple of times I thought like, okay, is this bit really necessary? Like, this isn't really adding something, it was kind of affecting the pacing, but overall, really, really enjoyed it. Really creepy, really smooky. Annie Wilkes is terrifying. Do not like. But yeah, enjoyed. Next up, I read a book that I've been really, really excited about for a while, and that is Sister Song by Lucy Holland. Now, this is one that I've been so excited about because I used to work with Lucy back in the bookshop, and towards my end of the time in the bookshop, I remember her sort of talking about the beginnings of this book. So seeing how well it's been doing and how much everyone has been loving it is just so cool. But that's, yeah, full disclosure that I used to work with her, lest anyone think I'm giving her favourable treatment. But this book I ended up really, really loving. It's based on an old British folk ballad, The Two Sisters, and it's set in oldie-worldy Britain while the Saxon invasions are going on, and basically it's a period of British history which I am so clueless about. I don't know shit. What I did find quite interesting is some of the words and some of the influence in here, I guess with my kind of Norse-loving hat on, I was like, oh, that word rings a bell, or oh, that thing rings a bell, so it's interesting seeing those patterns and those influences in there. So that was a nice little tidbit for me. Now for me personally, I found to start with, it took me a little minute to sort of settle into it. The style of it is quite lyrical and it feels steeped in this old English culture, and the pacing took me a little minute to kind of catch up on, but once I settled into it, I just absolutely fell in love with this book. You've got three sisters in this book, Reva, Keen and Cinna, and they are all these amazingly rounded characters in and of themselves. I fell in love with Keen, as I think many people who've read this book will. This book, I'm not going to give spoilers and stuff, but basically it explores loads of things that we think are kind of new phenomenon in society, but they're not. and it's got an awesome magic system going on in there as well. The kind of connection to the land and spirits, it's just absolutely gorgeous. So as I say, I've been thrilled to see this one doing so well. Really, really enjoyed it. Thoroughly recommend that you go and pick up yourself a copy of Sister Song. Even if I can't actually say those words very well, go get Sister Song. It's really good. It's great. I thoroughly recommend you go and pick up a copy of Sister Song because it's just fabulous. Then I read Night Shift by Kiara Ladner. This is one that Alice Slater had talked about and they've spoken about on a What Page Pod, and it came highly recommended. I enjoyed it alright. It was nice enough. Again, it's that kind of thing, 20-something narrators, where I've talked about it before, that kind of disconnect between me and 20-something narrators. But it wasn't so much that, because the lifestyle in this is and what goes on is just kind of so wild that there wasn't quite that same problem I've had with other narrators around 20-something, but it's sort of dark and twisty obsessive female friendships, which is a trope that one minute I'm here for and the next minute I'm really not, but I did really enjoy this one. So if you want something sort of dark and twisty that plays with sort of perceptions of people and of friendships and what ends we will do to be close to somebody and whether those relationships are healthy or not, is a banger. Then I read Clara and the Sun by Kazuo Ishiguro. A, because I picked it up in the supermarket. B, because when I was writing down all my books in the little book I was on about where I'm actually making a physical note of all the books I've read, I realised I've only read one Kazuo Ishiguro, and that's the only author whose surname begins with I that I've ever read before. So I thought, let's do a second one. Now, I haven't got the book. I did read a physical copy, but I've passed it on to somebody else who I thought might like it. I've seen lots of things about this one where basically I agree with that it was underwhelming. The first half of the book is a really interesting world concept. The writing is quite sort of tender and touching, and it feels like it's going somewhere. And there's all these threads kind of popping up and you think, oh, okay, and just nothing happens, really. The second half of the novel was just a real letdown. Nothing really happens. Like, the writing was nice enough, and I remember from reading the other Kazuo Ishiguro that I've forgotten the name of, but it's the one with Andrew Garfield and What's-Her-Face in the film. It's like the really famous one that I've totally forgotten the name of. It's not Remains of the Day, it's the other one. Never Let Me Go. There we go. Not that Kazuo Ishiguro's only written 2 books, but... So yeah, just found that thoroughly underwhelming. Was really excited about it, but underwhelmed. Then the next lot of books that I read were all the birthday bestseller TBR books. I say all. There were not many. So that video you can watch. I will link that in the comment description down below because I've wrapped them up separately. Then, as I mentioned in the end of that video, basically the end of April I just got distracted by Leigh Bardugo and Shadow and Bone. So everyone's been talking about the TV show that's been released on Netflix and the Shadow and Bone series and all of the Grishaverse novels, and I say Grishaverse and Grisha, and then when I was watching this I was like, they're saying Grisha, but it's like Grisha just sounds cool. I'm going with Grisha. I'm going with Grisha. I've always been tempted by those books, never enough to kind of seek them out, but when the TV show was coming out I thought, you know what, I'm going to read them. And I got a bit confused about the chronology of it. I knew that you've got the original trilogy, Shadow and Bone, Siege and Storm, Ruin and Rising, and then you've got the Crows duology, Six of Crows and Crooked Kingdom, and I wasn't quite sure how they fitted in, particularly because I know that the Crows were in the TV show as well. And I know that lots of people are saying, you know, you don't need to have read the books to watch it, but I just kind of felt like I wanted to. So what I ended up doing was I read the first Shadow and Bone book, Shadow and Bone, and then I read the first Crows duology book. Then I swiftly realised that in the book chronology, the Crows are set away after Shadow and Bone trilogy. So it didn't quite spoil things for me, but there were a few things I was like, oh, that hasn't happened yet. Oh, okay, that's going to happen in the first trilogy, isn't it? And in the TV show, they've brought the Crows in earlier because they know that they are popular characters and everybody wants them. They've brought them in earlier and kind of given them a prequel to the book's story to tie it in with the TV show, which seems like they've done quite well. So I read Shadow and Bone first, and it's nice and solid, the magic system's quite cool, the characters are alright, it's fairly, it's your fairly standard kind of YA fantasy. I'm not saying that in a kind of disparaging way or anything negative like that, but it's just fairly standard YA fantasy, but it's enjoyable enough. Some of the characters were a little bit annoying, some of them maybe not quite so fleshed out, but I know that Shadow and Bone was written before Six of Crows, so when I went into reading Six of Crows, Callie was telling me that it is much better written. Wow, that was a good sentence. And Callie was right. Six of Crows was amazing. I bloody loved the Crows. The characters are so well rounded, so fierce, so just yes. But the minute I finished Six of Crows, I enjoyed it so much, I immediately ordered Crooked Kingdom for it to arrive the next day, and I started it the next day. Now, the bit of me that likes to compartmentalise is like, I'm not sure what to do here, because basically Shadow and Bone and Six of Crows I read at the end of April. All the other Leigh Bardugo ones I have read in May, and we're in May, and my compartmentalising brain is going, no, it's May, you must wait till the May wrap up. But the other compartmentalising brain is going, well, they're all the Grishaverse, they're all Leigh Bardugo, so you could talk about them all in one go. And then that part is going, ah yes, but you've got one more book to go, so if you talk about all of them here, you're not going to have actually Basically, Crooked Kingdom was ace. Nina, I love you, Nina. I mean, I'm gonna get all teary, but Nina's the best character ever. There you go. So really, really loved Crooked Kingdom. So then I watched the TV show and started Siege and Storm and Ruin and Rising, which was a bit confusing watching the TV show whilst I mean, not literally at the same time. I'm not capable of that. But Siege and Storm and Ruin and Rising, again, fairly standard way fantasy. Really enjoyable. You could feel as the trilogy moved on that the characters were becoming more developed, much fuller. The world was also becoming fuller. I would say, spoiler alerts here if you're planning on reading them, the last book of the trilogy, I felt like it had a real opportunity to not pull its punches and go with a gut punch, and that Leigh Bardugo, I think, possibly was so keen to give like happy endings that she pulled back from those gut punches. But I suppose, you know, a happy ending every now and again is nice enough. By the time this goes out, I'll probably finish both of them, but I finished King of Scars and I'm about to start Rule of Wolves. And I would say, again, it's nice to be back with some of those characters, but King of Scars has left me feeling a little bit like there are some elements of the original trilogy in particular that Leigh Bardugo was hesitant to let go of, so have brought them back even though it doesn't necessarily add anything. And yes, some of it sort of smacks of not letting go, and I think possibly King of Scars won't be quite as full and an enjoyable read if you've not read Shadow and Bone or any of the other Grishaverse, but it was nice enough. So that's going to be my next read, Rule of Wolves. But again, I'll probably finish that by the time this video goes up, which is really bugging the completionist in me. So bit of a mixed bag for April. The beginning of April, those first few books I read feel like a lifetime ago. And then we had the birthday bestsellers in the middle, which again, you can check out the wrap up on that one. Bit of a Then the latter days of April and the beginning of May were all Grisha all day. It's strange, as much as I'm saying that like all the Grishaverse books were kind of like your fairly standard YA fantasy, and I've never really considered that to be my thing, I've enjoyed it so much that it's very difficult to get those characters out of my head and that world out of my head. And it would be very tempting to go sort of like fully down the rabbit hole and end up doing like, you know, full on Grishaverse videos and stuff. But that ain't really who I am and what I'm gonna do. But suffice to say, yeah, the Grishaverse, as much as the books aren't groundbreaking, I'm here for the Grishaverse in a big way now. Please can we have some more crows, please? That would be nice. Thank you. So that's my reading month. As per the usual, have a little chat with me in the comments down below. Have you read any of these books? Are you tempted by any of these books? Have a little general chit chat with me in the comments down below. So thanks very much for watching, and I will see you next time. Goodbye.